8 o'clock.
You all set, Luke? Set. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 meeting of the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation. Roll call, we have 3 members here. Notice you've been posted, correct?
Yes, sir.
Minutes, October 15th. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes by October 15th.
So, second?
Okay. Motion, Janet, right? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Executive summary and financial statements.
We have financial statements to the end of September. Do we have any questions on those?
No questions? Okay.
Everything else is just our new business.
Ask for a motion. Move. Unanimous. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Authorize sale of multiple properties.
Yeah, quite a few vacant lots this month. 425 Portland is technically buildable, but it's highly unlikely that they'll build there. The landlord next door would like to purchase that lot to expand the yard for his tenants. On North State Street, we have 2 very narrow lots, and the landlord next door would like to purchase those to expand the property. The other neighboring property is taxable income, not eligible to purchase either of those. Another fairly busy street, I think it's pretty unlikely that somebody would want to build a house in the development block of North State Street. You know, it's kind of in that commercial area. 1026 West Colvin is only 33 feet wide. It's been maintained by Floyd's for many, many years. They've been eagerly waiting for the city to foreclose on it. In fact, somebody told them 25 years ago that if they just mowed it, they would own it. And I explained that we actually have to file some paperwork, but they are glad to be taken ownership.
Have they been mowing it?
They have been mowing it all this time. Yeah. 172 West Calthrop is also technically buildable, but it is not in a focus area for steering. It's not in it's not in an R&I focus area. Is that why it's?
I'm not sure. This is one that we actually sold to her years ago, and she failed to pay for the re-subdivision map, so now we're letting her come back again.
Gotcha.
So we had different
Gotcha.
philosophies for selling lots back then.
Okay. Yeah, so the board had voted on this years ago, and it's never got recorded because you never get the subdivision map. So our policies have changed, but we have 300 buildable lots in our inventory right now. It's not like we're gonna run out.
What do we do differently now to make sure that's what she's supposed to do?
Has she paid already for the resub map?
She has now.
No, she's never actually paid for the purchase because we didn't close.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
We're
was
not- Yeah.
savings.
Yeah.
Makes sense now.
132 Kidd Ave is in kind of an industrial feeling area, just north of Erie Boulevard. The other neighboring properties are all commercial, and this owner occupant next door would like to expand their yard and a little bit more defensible space around the property. 1227 Milton is, you can kind of see here, an oddly shaped lot, so we don't think anybody's likely to build on it. The landlords who own the property next door would like to expand the yard. 1006 Burnett is a demolition candidate. I'm sorry, I don't have a diagram of that one. The neighboring property is a commercial property. It's Mike Corsi's plumbing business, and he's very excited to see that we're demolishing this property. After the demolition, he would like to buy it to make it green space, to expand his property, keep it clean and healthy.
No, I just assume, I never assumed government, make sure that everybody's, who buys properties up to date on taxes.
Yes, that's part of our screening process before it even gets on your agenda, is that we check to see that they don't have any delinquent taxes and no code violations. Correct.
Okay, so I'll ask for a motion, authorize sales of multiple properties. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Acquired from the city of Syracuse.
There are 2 properties we're looking to acquire from the city. 101 Beard Place is a vacant lot, and we actually own the lot next door. We're looking to put together building sites. And 131 Benedict is a blighted single-family home, and Sarah and Will Stevens live in this area. They purchased several of these kind of smaller Cape Cod homes from us in the past and put them to owner occupants, and they were using.
questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for order from the city clerk, use of motion. Jan, second. Mike, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Contract with demolitions. I'm so happy about this. I should be happy about demolishing things, but
Well, it certainly makes a big visual impact. There are 24 residential structures on page 7 of your packet that we recently put out to bid. For most of them, Chrysopolis is the low bidder. For 3, you can see that Scanlon is the low bidder, and for 2, Elite is the low bidder. Bronze is not the low bidder on any of these. These would all be done with LBI, the Land Bank Initiative money. We just have that $2 million award. We are working through the environmental review process for that grant. We do have a signed contract, but because we're going to be doing some commercial properties with this batch, it requires a higher level of environmental review than we've done in the past. And so this has to go before their board for the secret review, and that's going to take place on December 12th. So we're seeking the board's authorization to contract the lowest bidders for these, but we won't actually sign the contracts and authorize them to proceed until that is done on December 12th.
so when do you think they'll get to actually doing it?
Well, if we sign a contract on December 12th, they will then have to issue a 10-day notice to the Department of Labor. I would say it'll probably be January before they start coming down. And Chrysopolis can generally do about 2 a week, so it'll take some time for them to get through this list. But they're just about wrapped up with all the other ones that they have outstanding, so I'm not worried about them getting backlogged.
And HCR is doing a property specific secret review.
It's programmatic, it's not property specific, but they want to review our procedures. Yeah, so I have site-specific reviews for each of these sitting on my desk, and as soon as they approve the programmatic review, then we'll select all those. I don't anticipate.
Many of these properties are very familiar with political properties, neighbors and rights and stuff. It's got to get against street. This is the things.
Yeah, we went through and the hottest complaint items made the list, as well as many that we've owned for quite some time that may not necessarily be the most urgent from a health and safety standpoint, but the neighbors have been looking at the land bank sign for 8 years and they're wondering when's anything gonna happen. So we're kind of catching up on a lot of those as well.
Excellent. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to contract for multiple demolitions. Second, motion then, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Contract for most
Lafayette, sorry, 134 West Lafayette. We have in that same grant money to do stabilization at 10 properties. And this is one that we would like to use some of that funding for. It is occupied, it's occupied at the time of foreclosure, and we are working to sell it to the occupants that live there. But the house needs a significant amount of stabilization work before the title. It has a relatively new roof, but we're looking to do new siding, new windows, completely tear off and rebuild the front porch, and do some foundation repair. And then there's a limited amount of interior work that we want to do here, refurbishing the downstairs bathroom and putting new flooring in the kitchen. That cannot be covered by LBI, but it would get rolled into the purchase price. So we'll recoup that later. But all of the exterior work and the foundation repair would be covered by this grant.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a contract, motion for the contract of stabilization work on 134 West Lafayette. Second, Mike, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 216.
This is actually one that we have already sold, but we've done this with a handful of our stabilization grants. The buyer, Gary Campbell, is going to live there with his family. This will be their primary residence. It's a 2-family that he's in the process of converting to a single. He's done a great deal of work on the interior, but the neighbors can't see any of that, and they are pretty aggravated that the exterior still looks bad. He is converting it into a single-family home. He's pulled a permit for that. It's well underway, like I said. He has put a new roof on it. In this case, we would be doing windows, rebuilding the front porch, and it has aluminum siding, so it does not need roof siding. So aluminum or vinyl, I can't remember. Either way, it's new.
Questions? Okay, I'll ask for a motion for the contract of stabilization work 216. Second, motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, extend purchase contract, South Avenue parcels.
You guys voted 2 years ago to sell 8 adjacent parcels on the 600 block of South Ave to Trinity Financial. giving them 18 months to secure financing to build a approximately 60-unit apartment building there. It's immediately across the street from the Price Right grocery store. They have applied for PRI funds and received a commitment for that, but they have not yet applied for the loan and tax credits. This has just been a complicated project for them from a design perspective. It's half in the floodplain, so they're operating behind schedule, but they would like an extension so that they can get in their LIHTC application in the spring. They're working closely with Jubilee Homes, so we feel good about that and the outreach that they've done within the community. They would be mostly, take that back, these would, I don't think these are restricted to seniors, but they have a broader mix of income levels.
They're trying to get that approved, right, 80%.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I remember this was during COVID, it showed up on Zoom,
Yeah, I think,
and it was part of the video. Not his,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's a good project, especially the 80%. They originally were going to go for 4%, right?
that's correct. They changed course to apply for the 9% tax credits is their new plan. Trinity has a very good track record. And like I said, Jubilee is very invested in that neighborhood, so.
Right. Questions?
So I guess we need to think about how long of an extension. There will be another round in the spring. They would know by next fall if they've got it or not, so perhaps 12 months is the best way to go.
I think we mentioned that it's a very difficult parcel anyways.
Yeah,
It's not like people are clamoring for it.
Yeah, not a lot of people are asking for our floodplain parcels.
Yeah. So I think we're giving as much as 12 months as good, you think, or
Almost, should be fine.
Luciano, you okay with that? Okay, so I'll ask for a motion to accept purchase contract for South Avenue parcels. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Stickley House.
This is a fun one.
It's an interesting term.
Fun, unusual. We've owned this since 2016. To give a little bit of context, this all started many, many years ago when the Everson Museum applied for the grant to do the exterior restoration work. And then they were awarded the grant, but then they had some staff changes, their executive director left, and they decided that they did not want to proceed with it. And the mayor at the time was Stephanie Meyer. She was very concerned that if somebody didn't take this project on, the money would be lost and the house would probably be lost. It was in very rough shape. And it was the home of Gustav Stickley, who started the Stickley Furniture Company, and locally, historically significant. And it's widely thought to be the first arts and crafts interior in the United States. So she convinced UNCLA, the University Neighborhood Preservation Association, to take the property from the, I want to say from the Everson Museum, but the Everson Museum didn't actually own it at the time. The Stickley House Company still owned it. But they got New York State to transfer the grant from Everson to UNCLA. And we entered into this donation agreement that you see here in your packet, where UNCLA said, yeah, we'll do it, but we don't want to be stuck with it forever. We want to have an out. And that's where the land bank came in. And the plan was for UNCLA to do the exterior, to raise money then to do the interior, and ultimately turn it over to the Onondaga Historical Association, who would operate it as a museum/guest house. So on the upper floors, there would be revenue generating rooms, you can't call it a hotel, but hotel rooms, that would make money to keep the place operating, and then a museum on the ground floor. And our involvement was that we would say, if OHA is not ready to take title, when phase one, the exterior is done, we would step in and hold it on an interim basis. And now we've owned it for quite some time, which was not the plan. The exterior has been completed. It turned out absolutely beautiful. The building is now weather tight, so we're not worried about any further deterioration. The planning for the interior restoration has taken quite some time. The design work is all done now, and I believe it's almost ready to go out to bid for the interior restoration. And since we've been holding it for quite some time, we have been the applicant on a number of these grants because the owner has to be the applicant. So we've applied for federal and state grants. The Gustav Stickley House Foundation, Luke sits on the board, they have secured county and city ARPA funding for it as well. and Senator Rachel May secured a $500,000 commitment from the state that is being administered by DASNY, the Dormitory Authority that administers a lot of those line items. And DASNY requires that whoever is the grant recipient has to own the property for 10 years. So that was not part of our original plan, and we didn't want to leave this $500,000 on the table. So we convened a meeting with OHA and Stickley folks and said, what if we revise this agreement to say, you know, the plan was OHA would take title as soon as it's done, but in order to get this grant, we would keep title for 10 years, do a triple net lease where OHA is paying all of the expenses, and then at the end of the 10 years, we turn it over to them. It seems simple enough, it would satisfy DASNY, except there's been a lot of staff turnover at OHA since we entered into this first agreement, and now they are saying, we're not so sure we want to title at all. And so that's how we've arrived here. We need to show something to DASNY saying that we will own it for 10 years so that they will release this $500,000. And so we've drafted this revision that's in your packet saying that you know, we're committed to hold it for that 10-year period. Our goal is to find a tenant who would operate the property and enter into that type of triple net lease so that we don't have any operating expenses. And Stickley and the land bank will work together to find an appropriate entity to operate the property. It may still very well be OHA. They may change their tune once the renovations are all done, but we don't know yet who that entity will be. OHA's executive director, I think, has really been operating in good faith, trying to implement a plan that her predecessor laid out, but I think it's her board that has cold feet. She's been working with some hospitality groups to see if they might be interested in operating the hotel room portion. She's had some conversations with the gentleman that owns Hotel Syracuse, so I think we may end up finding a situation where maybe we have two tenants, somebody that operates the upper floors and then somebody else that operates the ground floor of the museum. There's a lot of unknowns at this point. But this revised agreement will enable us to free up the $500,000 from DASNY so that we can proceed with the interior renovations. It's a little bit of a mess, but
It's like one of those Major League Baseball three-way deals.
yeah.
Trades.
But I think it's worth doing just so that we can keep pushing this project forward.
I think sort of.
Yeah.
We're actually got a chance to push it, take care of it.
And just to add, the foundation generally reimburses us for all most of our expenses related to the house, so huge amount of, other than staff time, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting by having use it as like a sort of a hotel or Airbnb or something like that. I think it's probably going to do that.
I mean, it has a use variance to operate as a guest house, so we're calling it a guest house. But yeah, it's,
Yeah, there's just a few of these in the country that could really be a destination for
Sure.
people, not to mention obviously a good place for people for events or for SU and things like that. So.
I think there's a lot of architectural history nerds out there that like to stay.
Yeah,
so
sure,
it's
absolutely.
Bedroom.
Old custom. Okay. Any questions? Any more questions? Motion to enter the revised agreement with Governor Stickley. Motion. Vote second. Motion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, adopt new and revised policies and procedures.
Thanks for the introduction, John. It is a vacant house and therefore it is mission aligned from my perspective. All right, so these revised policies and procedures, what a can of worms this has turned out to be.
Another grant.
We have a $1 million grant from the EPA right now to
Yes.
do environmental testing. It has been incredibly useful for a number of our sites. And in fact, it can not only pay for testing, it can also pay for planning for remediation, putting together kind of scope of work so that we can bid out remediation projects. And it enabled us to apply for a cleanup grant for two of our properties. That grant application was submitted last week for 917 Montgomery and for 541 Seymour. So fingers crossed that those are successful. Very nice that they didn't have to pay out of pocket for the preparation of those grant applications. They have to do an analysis around the land alternatives in order to apply. So we have the money in hand and we're well underway spending it. And we had some confusion over whether or not the EPA is treating us as a governmental entity or as a nonprofit. In the past, we didn't have to go through this due diligence process prior to entering into a contract for our last grant. We were told that we had to do it this time. I explained that it wasn't required in the past and that we are treated as a governmental entity. In fact, we wouldn't have been eligible to apply for this grant if they didn't determine that we were a regional governmental entity. So a few times I've asked our grant administrator to look into this. They've said they're gonna do a little more research and get back to me. I haven't come back. Well, I guess they've finally determined that we should have gone through this review process prior to signing the contract. So you can see here, starting on page 54 of your packet, the checklist that we've gone through, and it's required a number of amendments to our policies.
We don't have.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
Very suspicious.
Save that for
Yes.
saving the trees. It is in your digital copy.
Yeah, I remember that.
So we've gone through this checklist. We've had to adopt a few new policies and revise some of our existing policies. It's all fairly straightforward.
There's at least one other land bank I know, previously went through this.
Oh.
Chat about that, but yes.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm glad to know that we're not being singled out. So once we get these adopted, we should be able to get through this clearance process and start getting reimbursed again for our grant-related expenses.
Any questions? Okay. Ask for a motion to revise, revise policies and procedures. So she has a second. Mike, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, let's go next. Authorized land banking contract with Champion Homes Incorporated, new build crossmat, single family house, 139 Basco.
You may recall a while back, the state issued an RFP looking for land banks to participate in a pilot program. Dina Levy at HCR is really interested in modular homes and whether or not they can be built significantly cheaper than stick-built homes. As you know, it's costing headquarters around $400,000, a little more than $400,000 to build a single-family home these days. They sell for around $150,000, so it takes a significant amount of subsidy to put each one up. And we think that this can be done significantly cheaper.
300,000.
I think under 300, yeah.
That seems sort of expensive too.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got to hook up utilities and
Right, okay.
or foundation. So I have here the budget summary. Champion has quoted us $260. We think that it is going to be a little bit higher once we do some landscaping and site work, but that, I guess there's pros and cons to this. It is a nice looking single family home. I have a plan here that we can pass around. It will be on a slab, so it won't have a basement, which is a drawback. However, it will have a garage, which most of the home new houses do not have garages. So I guess that's our trade-off. HCR will fully fund the construction of this up to $300,000, and then we will turn around and sell it to a low income home buyer. It'll actually end up being a pretty good deal for the land bank. It'll have attic access, but it's not like a finished attic you still have in.
Just thinking that.
Storage.
Somebody's gonna be looking for storage.
Yeah.
They don't have a basement for storage somewhere else.
I know, where are they showing their stuff?
Just leave them up all year.
That's right. You can put different decorations on it.
Sure, exactly.
Right, right. It will definitely have at least one of those drop-down ladders to get storage up to the attic. It does not have a full stair to the attic.
It's sort of a perfect street for that too. That's why, you know, so it's a small city.
Younger.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, any other questions?
So just to kind of explain where the funding is coming from for this. So we have a $2 million addition to our LBI contract that's just approved. it had not included this project. Crystal is waiting until we get the final numbers in, and then they'll deliver an increase for the amount that this house is going to cost. So proceeding with it as if it's currently covered under our LPI contract. And I do have one more item, if you don't mind.
We can do about this.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion to authorize amending the contract with Champion Homes Incorporated for the build of a cross mat single family house in 39 Maxwell Avenue. Motion has second. Mike. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We'll go into discussion now.
We are wrapping up our previous LPI grant, and one of the stabilizations is 201 West Kennedy. You guys voted last month or the month before to award that job split up between 3 contractors. We gave the porch to the lowest bidder, and they then later decided that they don't want to do it, and they're walking away. So we have put a cap on that, we're contributing up to $150,000 to that house and not more. They were gonna do the porch for 40. The next lowest bidder that has come in can do it for 75. But I have explained to the homeowners that we only have 40 to contribute, and they are willing to make up the difference. So we're seeking the board's authorization to contract with Randy Vidala for the porch, for us to fund up to $40,000 of that.
So Randy knows he'll have to get the rest of the money from the homeowner? Or?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, a motion to amend. We're amending our.
Just authorizing us to contract with Randy Vidala for the porch work.
Second. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion adjourned. Mike? Adjourned.
Thank you. Yeah.